Welcome back, everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. World leaders from across the global south gather in Rio de Janeiro for the BRICS summit. But this year's meeting marks something much bigger than just another round of handshakes and speeches. It signals a geopolitical realignment, and Southeast Asia is quietly but steadily moving into position. Why? Well, because it sees two strategic and unique avenues that will guarantee its long-term peace and prosperity if it shifts towards the global south. I will share with you what those two things are in just a second. BRICS, originally a five-nation group made up of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, is no longer the same club that it once was. Since 2024, the bloc has expanded dramatically. Egypt, Ethiopia, Indonesia, Iran, and the UAE have joined the ranks. Together, those 10 nations now represent nearly 40% of global GDP by purchasing power. That's more than the G7's 30%. You would agree that it truly is a staggering shift that underscores the bloc's rising influence. For most of BRICS history, Southeast Asia was largely absent from the picture, and that's changed and fast. Indonesia, the region's largest economy, officially joined in January of 2024, and it didn't take long for others to follow suit. Malaysia, Thailand, and Vietnam are now participating as partner nations. It may not be full membership just yet, but the direction of that shift is quite clear. So why now? Why are they shifting towards the global south now? One answer is that BRICS has grown up. For much of its existence, it was seen as a little more than a symbolic talking shop, if you will, as annual get-together with quite vague promises and no real structure. The West, of course, loved to pretend that it didn't even know what BRICS was, while the BRICS nations themselves were not very assertive on the global stage. But that perception is fading, it is changing. As the bloc matures and grows, it has transformed into a more credible platform for economic and strategic cooperation. Two specific initiatives have caught the attention of Southeast Asian leaders. They are the New Development Bank, or the BRICS Bank, and the Contingent Reserve Arrangement, the CRA. The New Development Bank, or the BRICS Bank, is a multilateral development bank designed to fund infrastructure and green energy projects. This is precisely what emerging economies of the global south want and need. They want growth, and they seek alternatives to Western-led institutions that are based on neocolonial policies. For countries like Malaysia and Thailand, the BRICS Bank represents a path to diversify their investment portfolios, especially to diversify it away from over-dependence on China or the West. So you see how nations are not necessarily flocking to China or to Russia as they seek to escape the West. No, that's not the case. They are diversifying and they are enhancing their own sovereignty by leveraging alternatives. The CRA, or the Contingent Reserve Arrangement, as I just mentioned, is a collective emergency fund. This is also very important, and it is unique to the BRICS bloc. It allows members, central banks, to access liquid capital during crisis, whether due to balance of payment pressures, currency crashes, or any other shocks. In a world increasingly plagued by uncertainty and instability, this safety net, this financial and economic safety net, is a compelling insurance policy. And this is exactly what's going on within the BRICS bloc that we typically don't hear about. The BRICS bloc is so much more than just de-dollarization and alternative financial system. It is a realignment of the global structure, of the global framework. But of course, it's not just about economies. Joining BRICS is also a strategic hedge, a way for Southeast Asian nations to navigate rising tensions between the United States and China. BRICS offers a space for what many are calling cooperative multipolarity, working with multiple powers, that is, without being trapped in a binary Cold War-style choice between East and West. The US doesn't like it, but the world needs multipolarity to enhance economic growth, to improve the standards of living and equality, and to make the world more stable and peaceful. Because when nations cooperate economically, they're less likely to go to war with each other in simple terms. They would choose diplomacy over military solutions. From a Southeast Asian perspective, BRICS is part of a broader movement towards South-South cooperation, building alliances among developing nations that have historically been left out of global decision-making. It's about having more voices at the table, more partners, and more leverage. It's also about not being cornered, not being confined. Countries like Vietnam and the Philippines don't want to be forced into choosing between Washington and Beijing. As geopolitical competition heats up, especially around hot-button issues like Taiwan, for example, nations are scrambling to keep their options open. Still, the shift is not without its complications, not without challenges. While some Southeast Asian countries are warming up to BRICS, others remain quite skeptical. And at the core of that hesitation is the relationship between the United States and China. As a founding BRICS member, Beijing plays a leading role in the bloc, something that might unsettle certain nations that are aligned with the United States, such as the Philippines. Take the South China Sea, for instance. Both the Philippines and Vietnam have active territorial disputes with China there. The idea of giving Beijing another platform to shape regional diplomacy through BRICS raises red flags because the governments of these nations are aligned with the United States. Then there is the issue of ASEAN centrality. For decades, ASEAN has prided itself on being the driving force behind regional diplomacy in Southeast Asia. By engaging BRICS individually, member countries like Malaysia may risk undermining that unity. Not all ASEAN states want to cozy up to BRICS, and not all can agree on what it even means to do so. Malaysia, for example, this year's ASEAN chair, is already walking a tightrope. It's invited Russian President Vladimir Putin and other BRICS leaders to the October 2025 ASEAN summit in Kuala Lumpur. And so that move could spark tensions within the bloc, especially among members who view Russia's presence as problematic or politically risky, such as the Philippines, for example. Again, those nations that are more aligned with the West. And there is an even bigger and, let's be honest, quite aggressive elephant in the room that we need to discuss. Of course, I'm referring to the United States here. President Trump has been sharply critical of the BRICS. He has previously threatened, as many of you might recall, he threatened with 100% tariffs on BRICS countries if they introduced a shared currency or tried to challenge the US dollar's global dominance. During his administration, he imposed tariffs just several months ago of up to 49% on some ASEAN members. Deeper ASEAN engagement with BRICS could ignite another wave of protectionist policies from Washington toward those nations that choose to align with BRICS, especially under, of course, the second Trump presidency when tariffs are imposed left and right. For ASEAN, which has worked very hard to maintain a neutral position between competing global powers, closer ties to BRICS might shatter that delicate balance. As of now, a full ASEAN membership in BRICS is unlikely. Let's be honest, the bloc is too diverse, too cautious, and too protective of its neutrality to make that leap. But if we consider individual members, that's a different story. Countries will continue joining or partnering with BRICS, not necessarily to oppose the West, but to broaden their options, to strengthen their economic defenses, and to navigate an increasingly unpredictable and unstable world. In the end, the rise of BRICS in Southeast Asia isn't about choosing sides, it's about choosing sovereignty. It's about nations taking back some measure of control in a global system that often forces them to pick between two giants. As the BRICS summit kicks off in Rio, one thing is very clear. The Global South is no longer content sitting on the sidelines, and Southeast Asia is stepping onto the field. Show your support, like, subscribe, and share if you enjoyed this quick update. Support my work on Substack and Patreon. I would love to see you there for more content. And of course, you will find those links in the description below. I certainly hope to see you there. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you back here tomorrow. Bye for now.